Hello, my name is Anne, this is In Search of Wonder, and today I am coming at you with the Murica the Beatiful tag. This tag was created by Tay, at Tales with Tay, and Shannon at Old American Spirit, and it goes in conjunction with our Red, White, and Blue readathon, also organized by Shannon at Old American Spirit with multiple co-hosts. I am having a marvelous time reading all of the Revolutionary War era books in the month of June and enjoying it so much. So thank you, Shannon, for putting that together, and thank you, Tay, for helping create this awesome tag. So let's get started. So for this tag, in order to make it extra patriotic, if you will, I decided to focus on books that were primarily about Americans or American themes or topics and written by Americans. Some of them are classics, some of them are fiction, some of them are nonfiction. We're running the whole gamut here, but they all have a primary theme of being very American in one way or another. So it made it a little bit more of a challenge, but I was excited to see that Tammy at the Protagonist Pub did the same thing when she made her video a week ago or so, whatever. I will link to her video. Actually, I will link to the playlist in the description box where you can watch everybody's tags if you haven't seen them yet. So on to the prompts. The first one is In God We Trust, a Christian fiction book. And the first one that came to my mind was All Manner of Things by Susie Finkbeiner. I love that book. It was so good. I should reread it because it's probably been a good 10 years since I read it. But honestly, I've loved everything or almost everything I read by Susie Finkbeiner to one level or another. All Manner of Things is definitely my favorite, but others also have very strong American elements to the story and American history. Another one that comes to mind is The All-American, which is about baseball, and also what was it called in the 1950s? The Un-American Activities Committee or whatever, and they were going after American communists, etc. And yeah, that was problematic. So she set that book in that era and dealing with those topics, and it was really good. Very strong American themes there as well, and I loved her exploration of the themes that she was working with in that book. Also, she wrote a series, I forget the name of it, but it is set in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl era and the Depression. And that whole series was so good. In particular, I found the first book in this series incredibly gripping. I didn't love the other two quite as much because of the way the story developed. It didn't go the way I wanted it to go. It wasn't bad writing or anything. It just took turns that made me sad for the characters. But it was very well written, great series, highly recommend. But back to All Manner of Things. All Manner of Things is set in the Midwest, I want to say Michigan, during the Vietnam War. And we don't go to Vietnam with any of the characters. That happens off page. But we see the characters in this small town grappling with that event, as well as just daily life in small town America and relationship issues and past and how it affects the present and all kinds of things. And it's gripping, it's emotional, you might cry, but ultimately it's hopeful and redemptive. And I really love that book. It's my favorite by her. So All Manner of Things by Susie Finkbeiner. The next prompt is Old Glory, a book that elicits strong emotions. And so I actually ended up with multiple ideas for this one, but I will show you two. The first is Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. In particular, the ending in this book, and I won't spoil anything, but it is a gut punch. Like, definitely will elicit strong emotions from you. Some people hate it. Some people love it, I think, because they hate it. That might be the most accurate way to describe how things work out, but definitely will elicit strong emotion. And then we have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which elicits strong emotion all the way through. Not always positive emotions, to be sure. There might be some consternation, there might be some awe, there might be some disgust, there might be some you know, wanting to turn away from what you're seeing kind of thing, horror. It definitely will elicit a lot of strong emotions as you read. Probably not pleasant ones, but all the same, strong ones. And of course, both of those books are by American authors, classic books, great books if you haven't read them yet. And then Superpower, and a book that features a main character with a unique ability or a big epic book. And so I went with the first idea, and I chose a book that I actually read this year, and that is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, also an American author and set in America. And what happens in this character is that in this book is there's a little bit of sci-fi going on, a little bit, where the main character, and it's all epistolary, so he's writing journal entries about his experiences. The main character undergoes a scientific treatment whereby he gains super intelligence. It explores the concept of what would happen and what that would look like, but also, is that good? What are the potential errors, or what are the potential dangers of having this super high level of intelligence, especially in someone who didn't have it before, and the hurdles that they have to cross in their relationships. And then the question of what happens if they cannot maintain that level of intelligence. Again, what will happen with the relationship, status in life, all of the things. Their feelings, their emotional stability, their resilience, like all of it. It's a very interesting exploration of the human mind and emotions and relationships. So I found it incredibly fascinating, but that was his superpower, super intelligence, if you will. The next one is The American Dream, and that is a book that features a great family. And I absolutely love a series actually, that has stuck with me since I was a child. Now, I could mention multiple, like for example, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott has a great family. There is the Moffat series by Eleanor Estes, also has a really fantastic little family. So I do recommend all of those, and I love them all, have loved them for a long time. But the one I'm going to mention specifically as the answer to this prompt is The All of a Kind Family, also a series by Sydney Taylor. And they're middle grade books. Neither one of them, like, they're all pretty short. Actually, they're not super long, but they are just so wonderful and delightful to read. Just a glimpse into this family's life in early 20th century New York City. And they are a Jewish family, so you get introduced to a lot of Jewish customs for someone like myself who wasn't familiar with that, especially as a child. That was so interesting to read about and to learn about their various Jewish festivals and holidays and how they celebrated them, and what it was like to live as a Jew in New York City at the time. And I found it incredibly fascinating and interesting, and I think that you would like them as well if you haven't read them yet. So The All of a Kind Family, a series by Sydney Taylor. Then we have One Republic, a book that features political intrigue. Now, I struggled with this one because I actually strongly dislike political intrigue in my books of any kind. Like, I just dislike it. Every now and then I will read a political book or a book that delves into a political topic. Every now and then. Can't tolerate a high level of that, but I will every now and then. But I strongly dislike fiction that has strong political intrigue in it, even if it's fictional political intrigue, you know, whether it's set in a real life country or a fantasy. I don't care. I don't like political intrigue in books. So I have two nonfiction options that I want to mention. And one is A Mystery of Mysteries, The Death and Life of Edgar Allan Poe. And that was written by Mark Divisiak. I read that a couple years ago, I think, and it was so interesting. It was kind of a reverse biography of Edgar Allan Poe, but sort of starting with the mystery surrounding his death, how he disappeared and then where he was found, and the clues that are there and the theories that have abounded since then. And it also goes through his life as well, as you work through these clues and then you learn about his life and the various places he lived and how he ended up where he was and did. So it was very interesting. I love books that delve into a mystery. My other recommendation for this prompt is going to be similar. I love that. I love like journalistic looks trying to uncover a mystery of something in the past, particularly a true crime. So very interesting from that perspective. But the political intrigue part comes into play with the primary theory surrounding Edgar Allan Poe's death. And one of the most plausible theories of all the ones out there is that he actually was kidnapped by people who were committing election fraud. There was an election in Baltimore. It was either state or local, I'm not sure, but there were people who would literally kidnap someone and drug them if they resisted to make them willing to go to different polling places and vote multiple times, of course, for the candidate of their choice. And so that was one sort of election fraud that was happening at that time. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think that Baltimore has changed a lot since the 1800s. But anyways, moving on. So yeah, there was a lot of election fraud back then, and that was one of the ways that they did it. And the main theory is that's what happened to Edgar Allan Poe. Is that what actually happened? Still nobody really knows. But that's where the political intrigue comes into play. Along a similar line, I've been talking about this a lot lately, so you've heard me mention it. I won't say more. I'll put a card with a link to another video about it. I never know where it goes. Anyway, so And the Dead Shall Rise by Steve Oney, which is another true crime journalistic delving into the facts, trying to uncover what actually happened and who is guilty of the murder of a young girl named Mary Fagan. And so much political intrigue in this one, which, like I said, is not normally my cup of tea, but because there was like a human interest story at the bottom of it that captured my attention, it made it worthwhile for me to read. But yes, so many politicians in play and politics of different factions of people in Atlanta and in the United States as a whole come into play here. Lots of political intrigue, and this is an excellently written book of journalistic nonfiction that I highly recommend if you like that sort of thing. It's not for anybody and everybody, but if you like that sort of thing, or if you like true crime stories and uncovering old mysteries and cold cases, that kind of thing, you will really enjoy this. So highly recommend if that sounds good to you. If it doesn't sound good to you, you probably won't like it. And then we have Pledge of Allegiance, a book or series you are fiercely loyal to. And I struggled with this one also, because while I am by and large a very fiercely loyal person, apparently not so much when it comes to books, and also when it comes to series, like maybe Emma M. Lyon, which is written by an American, so that would count, I guess. But also I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm fiercely loyal to it, because, I mean, if she takes a wrong turn, I'm not finishing the rest of the series. I don't feel a need to do that. However, I decided to go with an interpretation of an author that I love that is more or less an autobi for me, and I have really enjoyed all of her books, and I'm willing to defend the reasons why to people who say, oh, I don't really like her books. Okay, well, we can talk about that. Anyway, the author is Amanda Dykes, and the book in particular that I want to recommend is Born of Gilded Mountains. This. Such a good book. First of all, an amazing cover, like the gold lettering and the just gorgeous cover. Absolutely beautiful writing. Some epistolary elements, although it's not epistolary all the way throughout. I mean, perfection in the narrative style. Back and forth between two different perspectives, which were such a perfect contrast with each other. Both of the main characters were single in the story. The one primary main character remained single throughout the entire story. And it's just perfect that way. And romance is very light. It's not really a romance. It's set in a small town in Colorado in the mountains. And it's just perfection in a book. And I just love it. And if you don't think so, well, then we can't be friends. No, I'm just kidding. I love that one. And I love everything she's written so far. And I'm anxiously awaiting her next book. Then we have Oh Say Can You See? A book that surprised you with chills at the ending. Now, I could have said Ethan Frome here by Edith Wharton, but I said that earlier. So, and also I probably could have said, for that matter, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury as well, but what I'm gonna go with is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. And that one, yeah, surprised with chills at the ending. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to put it. For sure, it was an ending, all right? It was a terrific and horrible and memorable ending, for sure. And yeah, I think I got some chills, but they weren't a good kind. So then we have A Melting Pot, a blend of two genres. And so my favorite answer for this kind of question is always a biographical novel, because I love knowing that the story I'm reading is about someone real who genuinely experienced a lot of things that are happening in this story, but it's written in a novel format. And so I'm really able to go through the experiences with the character rather than just reading about them and having like an intellectual, analytical look at someone's life from the outside. It's like I get to be in their life and experience it with them. But you have to understand that it's also not biographical. It's not, the things don't necessarily happen in the order that they are in the book. Not everything may have happened. Some of it may have happened to someone else in the story, but you know, they just make a more linear plot, whatever. You understand that things get shifted. You understand that it's not strictly factual. That doesn't bother me. It does bother some people, and I understand that. But for me, I actually enjoy it. I actually enjoy being able to immerse myself in someone else's life, even if I understand that none of us can actually do that and still be true to reality. So anyway, after that long introduction, one example of that is Christie by Catherine Marshall. I love this super boring cover that I'm showing you. But anyways, it's Christie, and it is about a real girl, young woman, Christie, who moves to Tennessee, to the hills of Tennessee. And she's working in a church school on mission there. And it's all about her experiences. And it's a little bit coming of age in a sense, because she's young. She's like 17 or 18 at the outset of the story. And so she's grown, but she has a lot to learn, you know. And so she learns a lot, she grows a lot, and she comes into her own as a woman through the course of this story. There's a small element of romance, but really it's just about the things that she learns as she is giving up of herself to the people around her, as she comes to know them and to love them, even though they are very different from her and from the way that she was raised. And so I love this story. This story makes me laugh, it makes me cry, and it makes me ponder and wonder and all of the things. It has been very influential in my life and one of my favorite books ever. Then we have Secret Six, a book that features espionage. Again, espionage is not a favorite theme of mine. I've picked up a few fictional books along the way, and I've always been disappointed when they have spying as a primary focus of it. Some I've enjoyed, but to one extent, but I don't love it as a genre, and I don't love it as a primary theme. It's kind of an anti-buzzword for me, so I don't read a lot of fiction for that. However, recently I did read a book, a nonfiction book, A Woman of No Importance by Sonia Purnell, and that was about an American woman who was an early member of the resistance in France during the World War II, and she was actually put there under the auspices of the British government, which is an interesting twist to her story, because of course the Americans were not involved in the war officially at that point, but she wanted to do something. And she had lived in Europe for many years already by this point, and she loved France and the French people, and she wanted to be of service to them. So she was willing to be used by anybody who would use her skills, and she was just determined. And she was a force. She was a force in World War II in the resistance. And it was so fascinating to read about her life and her accomplishments there and all that she did to help in the war effort. Some people in retrospect have said that it's not an exaggeration to say that the Allies would have taken a lot longer to win the war if it hadn't been for her and her efforts in France. I don't know how much of an exaggeration that might be or how much truth there is to that, but that's definitely the perspective of some people who were in the know about how everything went down there in France. So anyway, it was so interesting to read. Again, that was a book I read fairly recently, so if I remember, I will link to the videos where I talked about it in my review of that book. That is my recommendation for espionage. One of the 5 books that I've read on the subject. Anyway, so The final prompt is Westward Expansion, and that is to tag someone else. I think a lot of people have done this tag already. So I'm going to mention a few people that I don't think have. And the first one is Alma at Alma's reading journey. The other one is Paige at God's brown-eyed girl. And then Bella at a book nook. And I don't think any of them have done this tag. And so I invite you ladies to do the tag if you so desire, no pressure. And in the comments below, let me know your thoughts about any of these prompts or the books, or what your answers to one of the prompts would be. And I will chat with you in the comments. See you there. Bye.